Who is the most underrated actor of all time?
It's Dolph Lundgren.
Correct. Why?
Well, because of his spiky hair, and his ice-cold demeanor, and his big muscles.
Absolutely.
I must break you.
The guilty will be punished. My name is Sergeant Andrew Scott.
Come on, guys, don't do this. If I don't get breakfast, I get real grumpy. I don't think you like me grumpy.
And you go in pieces, asshole.
Let's kick some ass.
Hello and welcome back to I Must Break This Podcast, the fan podcast celebrating the cinematic career of action legend Dolph Lundgren. Today, we're going back to 2017 and discussing Dolph's guest starring appearances on the 5th season of the hit CW show Arrow. In this adaptation of the DC Comics character, Dolph stars as Konstantin Kovar, the leader of a Russian criminal empire who shows up in flashbacks as the main antagonist to the show's hero, Oliver Queen. In these brief appearances, Kovar helps set the stage for the events that are to come in the series, as well as helping Oliver Queen establish his legacy and role as the titular superhero, Green Arrow.
You work very late hours, Mr. Queen.
Putting killing back on the table is a huge step backwards. That's not what she would have wanted.
The dead don't want anything. If you hit me again, I'm gonna kill you.
It's not pain that breaks people. It's fear.
SCPD thinks that these murders might be the works of a different vigilante.
It's just me out there. I can't do it alone. I'm recruiting a new team.
They're already out there, Oliver. Because of you. Inspired by you.
I'm Curtis.
Evelyn Sharp.
So wait, there's training?
Get past me. Ring that bell.
So we're playing games now?
I have no family. I have no home. I have no name. You bratva.
Who are you? The Green Arrow is mine.
Arrow, season premiere Wednesday, 8/7 Central on the CW.
I'm your host, Sean, and returning to the show to help me chat these episodes is comics aficionado Travis Bowe, host of the Real Comics Heroes podcast. Travis, it's a pleasure. Thank you for agreeing to come back.
Absolutely. I've been excited to come back and talk about Dolph and talk about this show and just get a chance to talk to you again.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's been a while, hasn't it? I mean, I think
so. Yeah,
almost 4 years or so.
Wow.
Is that right?
I mean, that sounds right. It's crazy, but yeah, that's probably right. Yeah.
Yeah. Last time I had you on, I think I had to twist your arm to chat Hidden Assassin, right?
Yeah.
And but what was interesting about that one is I don't remember you coming out and hating that one. You actually seemed to appreciate it, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I remember. I think fun. I think back on that movie fondly. I haven't watched it since, but of that genre of just kind of, whatever you want to call that particular, movie. I think it was pretty good. So
thriller, I guess we can say.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Political thriller, maybe.
Political, kind of.
Well, I'm so glad to have you back on. I mean, because I always try to find guests who I think would kind of align and fit the and fit the topic that we're talking about perfectly. And so when I broached the idea of doing this one, I mean, I'll just be honest. At first, I don't think I was gonna do the 6 episodes of Arrow, but then I thought, well, this is Dolph playing a new character once again, and there is a bit of a story arc. So I thought, I think this lends itself perfectly to an episode. And I mean, having you back on, it was kind of a no-brainer because I think it's fair to say you're a bit of an expert in the world of comic books, right?
Expert might be a bit lover, not an expert.
Okay. Well, I mean, this will be interesting because I know that you are familiar with the show. I know that you're familiar with the comic book and the character and all of that. I'll be honest. I guess you could say that I'm a bit of a lover as well. I read comic books growing up constantly. Yeah. I still do. I still have a huge collection. I don't think I've picked up a comic book, sadly, though, in years. Not because I've outgrown them or I don't like them or anything like that. It's just, I've talked.
Yeah, there's no time for it sometimes. Yeah.
Well, there's no time for it. And what's weird? And this is going to make me sound like Old Man River. And I don't mean for that to at all. But I don't really like the comic books nowadays. When I was a kid, reading these things, the art was beautiful and you could tell that it was hand drawn. It was awesome. Nowadays, if you look at most comic books, the artwork appears almost like oil paintings. It's almost too realistic. Wow. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's definitely some that I've read, that I don't enjoy. I'm more just plowing through it for the story. And I read everything now digitally, mostly Marvel stuff through their Marvel Unlimited app. And most of what I read is old stuff. I've went back and have been reading everything from the 60s forward. So all the Avengers and Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and all that. So so that's great. Just being able to see all the old artwork,
Well, I guess that's kind of the beauty of the digital age that we're in.
Yeah.
Because when I was collecting in the comics, the comic collecting boom heyday, back in 1990 to 93 was when it was huge. I remember. But in order to read something from the golden age, you had to pluck down quite a lot of money. So it is kind of interesting that nowadays you can read these things and not have to worry about breaking an account in order to find it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, well, if we look at this show, like I said, I knew that you'd be perfect for this one. I guess before we dive into these particular episodes, and we should first of all say that we're not reviewing the entire television show Arrow.
Right.
We're not even reviewing the entire 5th season. We are just looking specifically at these 6 episodes that Dolph guest starred on. And so I was hoping you might be able to fill in some of the gaps, maybe help me understand some of the things. But before we get there, I guess your experience with not just the television show, but I guess the character and the comic book. It's my understanding you were a pretty loyal watcher of the show for the first couple seasons. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I watched seasons 1 through 3, and just kind of fell off of this and all of the CW shows. I watched probably 2 or 3 seasons of The Flash and at least the first season of Legends of Tomorrow. So for a while I was really into this whole, they call it the Arrowverse, since it started with this show. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It just became a little routine with all the CW-ness of it, if that makes sense. They tend to follow a format, and that can get a little old. And I think we were talking just through our messenger that had these seasons been 13 episodes, like a Netflix Marvel, Daredevil kind of series, I think they would have been able to do tighter storytelling, not have to fill out 23 episodes every season, and like I said, get filler. I think these could have been, pretty amazing shows, and I do think they're good shows for what that's worth. But I think for a little while there was just so many of them, and there was, when these were on, I know that there was a flux between, we no longer have cable, we don't have the streaming service that these episodes, are on particularly. So it also just falls away, because I don't have the ability to watch them when they come out. So I need to catch up with them later. And then, like everything else, it's just like, I'll get to it when I get to it. But yeah.
Well, you have precisely described why I quit watching everything that comes out of Marvel, to be honest.
Okay.
Because I remember back in that period. Obviously you remember this, but 2008, okay, when the first Iron Man movie came out.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2008 to 2011, okay, when it was all building up to the Avengers. Oh man, I'll admit, that was pretty exciting. That was pretty cool. The problem is, at least for me, because I know that it still has tons of loyal fans and followers, but the problem for me, at least, especially within the past 10 years, is they've been doing so much. They've been doing too much. And it all, for me at least, it's all started to feel the same. You know what I mean? I mean, I know that a lot of fans out there are like, as of this recording, Guardians of the Galaxy is in theaters and doing quite well. And I know a lot of people have been asking me, have you seen it? Have you seen it? And I'm thinking, no, I haven't even seen the first one, because to be honest, like I'm sorry. And I've said this on the show a couple times, I think already, but they've burned me out, man. I mean, they've been doing, and I think that's with anything. When you put out content or the same thing so much, then you're going to saturate the market and get fans tired. I mean, if you just look at this, okay, again, as of this recording, we're in May, but back in March, they just released the Ant-Man movie. So we're not even like 2.5 months, have passed since the last one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you would have told me when I was a kid, there's going to be so much comic book, content on the small screen and the big screen, that you're not even going to go see all of it. I thought you were crazy. There's no way I wouldn't watch all of an Arrow show and every Marvel movie, But yeah, for a long time, I always heard about the comic book movie fatigue. It's like, well, I don't think I'll ever get there. But ever since Endgame came out, Endgame left me so satisfied that everything post Endgame, I've cared a little less about everything. The next phase after Endgame with like Shang-Chi and I don't know what all else was in that phase, but yeah, it all just didn't matter to me as much. And I'm, with you, I haven't seen Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and I haven't seen Guardians 3. I did see Thor: Love and Thunder. I did see Black Panther 2, so it's like I'm still seeing some of this stuff, but it doesn't matter to me as much anymore. I still love the comic book movie, genre as a whole, but yeah, I'm finding it's less appointment television or appointment movie. I don't have to see this stuff immediately anymore.
Yeah. And I think you just said it. I think the luster and the the shine of these films has really started to wear off a bit. And so, I mean, obviously, I don't hope, it's not like I wish any film, okay, whether it's a comic book based film or anything like that. I don't wish any of these to do poorly by any means. But it is interesting now that we're in a state where, okay, Quantumania, okay, I know that one took a huge hit at the box office in its second week, and then that one kind of left. I know not all of the Netflix and Disney shows have gone over super well, and so it is kind of nice, I guess, in a weird way, to see this huge behemoth conglomerate that is Marvel and Disney finally be humbled for a time. Okay, well, I mean, if we look at the character of Green Arrow, okay, I don't know where you always stand on Green Arrow. I mean, like I said, I read comics growing up, and I knew who all the characters are. Travis, right. I can just say that now. I knew who all the characters were. I mean, this is going way back. I don't know if you remember this or not, but do you remember comic collecting cards?
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard to believe that was a huge market that it was.
Oh, man, that's probably what got me into reading comics, because the cards were easy to trade in the classroom. Yeah. And so I'd have these little, pictures of Spider-Man and I was very Marvel centric, for the longest time. So that's what got me into reading, Spider-Man and X-Men and all that. So yeah, very familiar with the comic cards.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I collected, I don't know if you remember, but DC Comics had their own line of trading cards. They were called the DC Cosmic cards.
Okay.
And so I collected all of those. I loved those things, because what was cool about those ones is they would have multiple versions of, say, for example, Superman. Okay, they had multiple versions of all the characters. So they had the Golden Age Superman, the Silver Age Superman, and then the Modern Age Superman, and they did that with all the main characters.
Nice.
And so, I collected those. Superman, I think I've said this on the show before, but Superman's always been my favorite hero, especially out of DC. Though I also had an affinity for a few other DC characters. The Flash I was a big fan of the Flash. Swamp Thing, I always thought Swamp Thing was really, really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Lobo, I don't know if I'm sure you know Lobo. Lobo was a cool character. And what's interesting is I knew of the Green Arrow. Okay, I knew of the Green Arrow, but he was never a character that I considered reading or pursuing for monthly adventures. I mean, to me, he always seemed like a kind of like a Robin Hood ripoff. I mean, going right down to his look and costume. I mean, if you even want to go further down the rabbit hole, I know back in the early 80s, they had the Superpowers line of action figures.
Sure.
Okay? I loved those action figures. They were so colorful. But Green Arrow was always a character that I collected all of those figures, but Green Arrow was a character that I was like, I'm okay not having that one. I don't need that one.
That's funny. I never, Green Arrow was always someone who would pop up in a comic I might be reading, maybe a supporting character, but I think I read Kevin Smith did a run, a Green Arrow. I forget, was it called Year One? No, that was someone else that wrote Year One for Green Arrow. Kevin Smith did a run of Green Arrow comics, and I read that, and it was pretty fun. I think the art was by Phil Hester, who I really like, and that's probably the only run of Green Arrow comics I've ever read. And then he's popped up in things like he's got a pretty memorable part in The Dark Knight Returns. Kind of shows up in the final battle to help Batman take down Superman. And yeah, I mean, just like I said, he'll pop up in other things that I might be reading. But yeah, I've never really read a ton of Green Arrow comics. So.
And I would be, I mean, I don't want to put this challenge out there to any of the listeners, but I'd be willing to bet that the number of fans who are saying my favorite DC Comics hero, okay, is Green Arrow. I mean, you know what I mean? He doesn't really seem like that. You know, it seems like if you wanted to go with a green hero, Green Lantern seems much more unique to do that with.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I do know that I do know a little bit about the history, not much. I don't feel the need to go down, the creation of the character, but I do know that there was like a team up series back in the 70s between Green Arrow and Green Lantern. I guess the minds at DC Comics, I wonder if they thought to themselves, "Hey, wait a minute, these two characters really aren't selling and their own titles vary that much." But I guess if we put the two green characters in their own comic series together, instant hit. But wasn't there one issue? It's gone down as a classic where wasn't Green Arrow like battling? Or no, they were dealing with someone who was battling drug addiction, right?
Yeah,
it was
a
huge issue.
It massively, it's a historic, issue. It's a famous cover. It's Green Arrow's sidekick, Speedy, is it's Green Arrow and Green Lantern. They're like busting through a doorway, and you see in the foreground it's Speedy, who I think has a syringe up to his arm, or maybe there is no syringe, but they are implying, and the word balloon is like Green Arrow saying my ward Speedy is a junkie, and it was them taking on, drug addiction. I think that was Denny O'Neil and oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. He just passed away too. Actually, both of them did. Neil Adams. And so, yeah, I think they worked together on most of that series, but definitely that issue. And just kind of taking on the drug, epidemic that was going on for a while. And Marvel kind of did a similar thing. They had Harry Osborn was, addicted to pills. I mean, that's as specific as Stan Lee would get with any of that. But I mean, that one I think was made history, I think. So it's certainly the only cover of a Green Arrow comic I can recall.
Yeah. I think most fans, to be perfectly honest. I mean, maybe I don't want to go out there and make assumptions or anything like that, but I'd be willing to bet that the television show, okay, if we look at the CW television show, it seems to have done with the character what the Aquaman movie did for the Aquaman character, in that it made the character seem cool. I think we can agree. I think we can agree that both Aquaman and Green Arrow on the page, if you look at them in their original comic book incarnations or whatever, they may not have always looked like the coolest, flashiest character, I think. But I know that, with the Aquaman movie, I mean, that's Jason Momoa. I mean, he really made that character. He kind of added this kind of rock and roll element to the character of Aquaman. And that's basically, I think, to an extent, what kind of happened with the Green Arrow character. I mean, first of all, the show is called Arrow. They cast the actor Stephen Amell, okay, who is young and kind of a badass or whatever. And in retrospect, I was thinking about this before we started recording. In retrospect, I think, in my opinion, it makes sense why, of all the DC Comics characters, why CW chose Green Arrow to do a TV show. Because I honestly think when you use a character who's not as beloved as one of the flagship characters, you can almost go a little bit more under the radar, maybe take a few liberties, and you don't have to worry about pissing off legions of fans. I mean, if you take a character, for example, Superman and Batman, those characters are legendary. Yeah. Okay. And they have a ton of baggage with them. Okay.
Of course.
And so I almost wonder if that's why CW, out of all the characters they could have chosen in the extensive DC universe, they chose, okay, you know what? We're going to do Green Arrow. Because again, you can do a show based on him. You can take a few liberties, as this show did. And, the number of fans that it's going to piss off is not going to be huge. If anything, it's going to turn more onto the character. Wouldn't you agree?
Sure. Oh yeah. No, I think that's a fair way to look at it. And, cause he is kind of a blank slate of a property. You can bring in guest stars, you can bring in, other characters, you can play with storylines. It is a kind of a sandbox type character. Whereas if you did Superman, Batman, maybe Wonder Woman, the big three, you're locked into, they fell in the rut with Smallville. It's like eventually they just started doing every Superman storyline that everyone knew. They even did a Doomsday storyline, and all this before the character had even become Superman, So it's like they were racing to do all these famous storylines in a slightly watered down version because they couldn't do certain things. And with Batman, how many Batman related shows without Batman have there been? Gotham, maybe not as many as I'm thinking, but like Gotham, the Pennyworth, Titans to some degree. They've been so afraid to do a live action Batman show that they keep doing Batman adjacent things. That I think there's a brand new one that just started on the CW. It's like the kids of like Poison Ivy's kid and some new version of Robin. It's like, you guys, you want to do a Batman show, obviously, but you're just too scared to, They had a Batman-esque character on Smallville, one season or a couple episodes. Yeah, I think his name was Adam Knight, and he was a rich kid
clever.
From maybe from Gotham even, but he was Batman in everything but name, So,
wow. Well, this character and show, I think we can go ahead and say it. This character and show was so successful. We're not discussing the entire series. But this show ran for 8 seasons on the CW. It was a hit. It was a hit.
Oh yeah, I've never really heard anyone have a bad thing to say about this series. Maybe, episode here or there, but this Stephen Amell version of Oliver Queen and Green Arrow has I think, been almost universally praised as like he makes a good Green Arrow,
Yeah.
I don't think you can take that away.
Yeah, the show was so successful. Let's just say it. Okay, I don't think there would have been that Flash TV show if it wasn't for the success of this one. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And Flash, I think we can agree, is a bigger character in terms of popularity than Arrow. But what this show did is it kickstarted, you already said it, the quote-unquote Arrowverse, which had the Oliver Queen character teaming up with a number of other heroes from DC Comics. Yeah. And what this also led to was it led to all of these crossovers. And again, I didn't watch any of these shows. I just know the marketing train for these shows was huge. Okay, but it led to crossovers with other shows on the CW that included, you already said it, but Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow. Kudos to CW, man. Kudos to CW and to DC. They figured out a formula, and it worked. If we look at the plot, the premise of the show, it's pretty straightforward. Stephen Amell plays Oliver Queen, who is the mayor of Star City, I guess, and he also moonlights. He also moonlights as the vigilante Green Arrow when the sun goes down. I think that's a pretty fair synopsis right?
The whole mayor thing was new to me when I first watched the first episode we're going to talk about, and in that cold open, the recap thing, it tells you, I'm Oliver Queen, I'm the mayor of Star City. That was brand new for me. So that must have been a season, maybe at the end of season, what is this, season 5? So maybe in season 4 they hinted at him taking a run at being mayor. So that was interesting, but I don't hate that idea. It's kind of a cool way to do it.
Yeah. Well, the episodes that we're chatting today, they're from season 5. They encompass a 6-episode story arc that are scattered throughout the season. I would argue, I think they're scattered a little bit too too much throughout the season,
right.
to be honest. I mean,
yeah,
the show doesn't need to, or the season didn't need to be 23 episodes, but hey, what are you going to do?
And yet the spread that we're talking about starts with season or episode 6 and goes to 23. So yeah, there are some big jumps in there.
Yeah, it's almost ridiculous, but yeah, they're scattered throughout the season. Real quick, these episodes premiered in October of 2016, and these episodes are So It Begins, Vigilante, Capuchin, Honor Thy Fathers, Missing, and Luan Yu. That one in particular is the season finale. You know, I'll be honest. I got wind that our man of the hour, that Mr. Lundgren, was going to be guest starring in some of the episodes. I was pretty excited. I remember I did watch, when it premiered, I did watch the first episode that he was on.
Oh, okay.
But then after that, there would be like 3-4 episodes in between till the next episode that I didn't watch any of the other ones until until we got ready to record, because it got to the point where it was like, okay, I'm tired of waiting. And
yeah,
some of these episodes we can just say, like, you know, he may be in them, but he's in them for maybe 15, 20 seconds or so at the very, very end. So it's like, okay, yeah, he's in the episode, but he's really not. You know?
Yeah, and that's one that we haven't really mentioned. Like, this show had a interesting way to tell stories, because they had the present day storylines, and then it had flashbacks to the time when Oliver Queen, you know, was stranded on a desert isle, or, you know, whatever, that classic kind of trope. So they were able to do a lot of interesting things with his time in the modern setting, the present day, and a lot of times the flashbacks onto the island would inform what he would do in the present day, how he would solve a problem. They'd cut back to the flashback, and suddenly he's dealing with, you know, a similar situation, or, you know, so they were able to do interesting things with the island storylines that I think I was really interested watching these, because at a certain point, you know, the whole, you know, when the series starts with Oliver Queen, I've been stranded on a island for years and years, and now I've been rescued and brought back to civilization, and you find out, well, he wasn't really alone on that island, and then you find out, he wasn't really on the island the entire time. He's been, quote unquote, missing or dead, you know, for five years, I think it was. And then, yeah, like season 3 or 2 or 3, I think, you find out, yeah, he left the island. And here, where we catch up with him in season 5, like, he spent time in Russia, you know, doing all this stuff that we'll talk about. So it's interesting. There's a lot of wiggle room for the showrunners, the writers to play with these flashback sequences. So I really dig it, and I think it worked well with the story. But then, yeah, you get, that's what we're kind of focusing on. You know, we want to see more of this flashback stuff, because that's where the Dolph is, you know, and we don't get a lot of that, you know. So it is a little, you're sitting around, I think, with some of these episodes, like, okay, come on, get to the relevant stuff, you know. So,
well, see, so I think that's where you and I may be at opposite ends, and I think that's okay. That's totally fine. But I was not a fan of the flashback stuff. I felt like, you know, I mean, and this is, again, my own personal opinion, but I think, okay, that I think prequels, okay, again, in my opinion, they're a bit of a tough sell, and I think they're difficult to do, because creating any kind of stakes and urgency is so hard, because you, in a sense, you already know the outcome. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and if you look at Oliver Queen in modern day, we see these flashback sequences, but then we see Oliver Queen in modern day, and it's like, well, he seems to be doing just fine in modern day. You know what I mean? So it's like, this prequel here, you can. They show him he's imprisoned and he's tied up, and there's one of the episodes where he's being tortured by Dolph. And okay, that sucks. Okay, but I think we can assume he's going to turn out okay. I mean, that was one of the big reasons, to be honest. If you look at that Wolverine Origins movie that came out back in 2009.
Yep.
Yeah, 2009. I mean, that movie had a lot of problems with it, I think we can say. But I think one of the big issues with it, at least for me, was it was like, okay, that's really cool that they want to tell Wolverine's origin story. Fine. Okay. But if you look at it, like, Hugh Jackman was 10 years older when they made that movie, and he was so much more jacked, okay,
Sure.
and so much more beefed out than he was in the first X-Men movie. So it's like, you want us to believe that this takes place before the other stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
And this also is doing that thing, which I hate. You and I were talking about this, but this is like a TV trope that I've never liked it, but it does that TV thing where, to establish that this is in the past, they throw a bad long-haired wig onto Stephen Amell, just to let you know, okay, this takes place, 5-10 years prior than the events that we're watching. It's like, okay, well, I guess we know this because he's wearing that terrible wig.
Yeah. I like the flashback stuff because there aren't any stakes in terms of is he going to live, through make it through this situation alive. But I do think that it does a pretty good job of informing the character and showing why he is the way he is. So you learn little things about why, what changed Oliver Queen, when in his time away, because when you see him in the start of the series, he's a frat boy, type, rich, spoiled kid that you would hate, and so you learn, why he is more of a severe and serious character. But then I was watching it and thinking about it, and it reminds me a lot of the flashback stuff did you ever watch the Highlander TV series?
No, I'm familiar with it. I thought that was a big thing when it was in syndication, I remember.
Yeah. So they would also do flashbacks to show you things that character had been through over his, immortal, lifetime. So just fun ways you can tell, period piece, like little vignettes, here they can spend some time doing, this little adventure of Oliver's in Russia, and sometimes it was stuff on the island, and overall I'd say I enjoyed it. But
well, I mean, and obviously I'm coming at this a little biased, okay, because it's like, look, I want more Dolph, you know what I mean? And so and I think, and I could be wrong with this one, but I think what happened was with a lot of these actors, especially if you're getting a guest star appearance, especially one who has a lot of baggage, like someone like Dolph Lundgren has. I wonder if the production can only afford him for so many days, on set and things. So what they have to do is they have to film his scenes, and I guess maybe they figured, okay, we can't make him. I mean, that was my big thing. Is I was like, man, I would have liked this, I think, so much better if instead of being a villain who's presented in flashbacks, if he was a current villain, okay? Or what they also could have done, which I think would have been really, really cool, if they want to make him a flashback villain, fine, okay? Because what they do in one of the episodes is they toy with, okay, he's dead, or at least so we think, okay? Oliver Queen kills him, and then it turns out he's not really dead, and he's gunning for revenge. Wouldn't it have been cool? I'm just throwing this out there. But wouldn't it have been cool if Kovar's character, this is Dolph's character, Konstantin Kovar, we should say, wouldn't it have been cool, though, if his character came to the present.
Right.
And his character teamed up with the villain. Because we haven't really said, but these scenes are these scenes are in flashback, and they're kind of tied in slightly with the main story arc of the season, which has Oliver Queen. He's on the trail of a serial killer who's calling himself Prometheus.
Right.
Wouldn't it have been cool, I'm just throwing it out there, if in the final couple episodes, it turns out that Konstantin Kovar is not dead. He has come back to Star City, and he's teaming up with Prometheus. So then in that way, you're getting him in the present. You know what I'm saying?
I definitely think, for our purposes and looking at these 6, I definitely agree with you. I think that is a trope might not be the right word. I think that is a card that this series has played many times. I think the character Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, I think they kind of did that with him. Like he was an island villain, and then he became a present day villain. And I think they did this. All of Oliver's, enemies that he made while his time on the island, or at least his time, away, came to the modern, came to the present day. So I think that's just something they've done several times, and you're absolutely right. That would make a fun story, but I think they've done that enough times that would just be repeating that same thing again. So yes, it would make this story better, but probably would have felt, as a series as a whole, probably would have just felt like they were recycling a thing they've done before.
See, this is why I'm glad I had you on. See, you're on. You can put me in check. So thank you.
Well, I mean, I totally agree with you, but
yeah.
Well, actually,
if we look at the plot of Dolph's arc, okay, we can say if we look at the plot of his arc and his overall character, I will say that despite there not being enough of him, and despite his scenes all being done in flashback, like we kept saying, I do really, really like his character.
I do too.
I will say that I do really like his character. So Dolph plays the character Konstantin Kovar. He runs a Russian criminal empire. Like we keep saying, his scenes are all via flashback when Oliver Queen was still a relative rookie at being a superhero vigilante. I think at this point he still hadn't fully adopted the mantle of Green Arrow, but he's kind of at the stage where he's kind of toying with it, I think.
Yeah. We'll see, like in the Capuchon episode, that word, I guess in Russian means hood. So that's like when he first kind of plays with taking on an identity, playing a character, and I also really liked what Dolph did in these episodes. I like the character. It made me really wish we had gotten a proper Bond villain. I wish they had really used him in a Bond movie. I know he was technically in A View to a Kill, but that's blink and you miss him kind of thing. But I wish he'd been, used well, maybe against not Dalton, or Dalton. I think he would have been good against, or maybe even Pierce Brosnan. Kind of that late 80s, 90s time period. Now I don't know if you could really fit him in. Certainly not against like the Daniel Craig era. But who knows what they'll do next? But yeah, I like this character that he's playing, and I did some reading. Dolph Lundgren did an interview with IGN talking about, like, I think the first episode of his arc had aired, so they were kind of talking about that, and he was talking about some stuff that he's shot but hasn't come out yet, like some little fight work that he got to do, and just the way he viewed his character as being, he even said that he compares him to like Ivan Drago if he had made a bunch of money and, ended up working with the government, and kind of, I guess he views his character here, this Konstantin Kovar, as a, what does he say? Businessman, criminal, government agent kind of thing. Like he's kind of working for the FSB, which is Russia's Federal Security Service.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's essentially, the character is, you said a couple things there. Okay. I mean, it's very clear what they're doing here. Okay.
Yeah.
Dolph's, one of his most famous roles is Ivan Drago, right? Where he plays a Russian. And so he's played a Russian quite a few times in his career. So that's clearly what they're doing and why they cast him.
Sure.
Was, to kind of harken back to that.
You talk a little bit about Dolph Lundgren coming in, and I know that Mark had increased his episode count once he saw some of the stuff coming back, and kind of what we're going to get to see. Obviously, he's a legend.
Yeah, he is. He's, it's interesting watching someone that has sort of cut their teeth in film walk on to a 23 episode a year television show with 14-hour days. Because he just moves at his own pace, and it's not indulgent. He when he came to set, he knew his stuff. Not that I expected anything less. He was very respectful. He asked a lot of questions. He clearly done his homework, but it's like Dolph moves the way that he moves, and he's very, very thoughtful and is contemplates his lines and. He's been great so far, but it's a real change of pace, and I do think that it would have been a missed opportunity in the last year of these flashbacks to not have a really worthy adversary, and we found that in Dolph, which is why he'll be around for a while, and it's been a blast to work with him. It's been awesome.
Kovar, this character, he's essentially the big snake, if you will, that Oliver's been trying to nab, knowing that with him out of the picture, the Russian criminal empire is going to be weakened significantly, almost over. Kovar, he controls a variety of things. He controls fighting rings, weapon smuggling, casinos. He also has a private army and militia under his command. It's a really cool character, and I've said this in previous episodes as well, but as evidenced in numerous previous films, Dolph plays a fantastic, menacing bad guy.
Sure.
Okay? He plays a wonderful villain. Here, he's once again applying a Russian accent, like we said, but there are some really interesting touches that they add that I actually really, really liked. I love how he's well-dressed and in a suit most of the time. There's even one scene where he throws down with Oliver Queen, and he's in a tuxedo that's kind of, half, the tie hasn't been tied yet. You know what I mean? I really like that. I like how he rarely shouts, if you think about it. He rarely, his menace is all done with a really quiet demeanor as a means to intimidate. I actually really, really like that. I'll say right now, actually, I think his acting, okay? I think I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think his acting in these scenes is some of his best that we've ever seen. You can tell. When he's on screen, he has that ability he kind of sucks the air out of the room. He kind of brings your attention to him. He just has that presence. But that scene and I was going to play that scene here in a minute, actually, but when Oliver first meets Kovar. So what happens is Oliver Queen, he wakes up, he's been kind of ambushed, right? He's tied up at a table and Kovar is introducing himself as he's casually eating his meal and he's threatening him. This is great stuff. That was my absolute favorite part.
Mr. Queen, over again. I thought you might enjoy a break in my men's questioning. I trust you show the proper manners. Go ahead. Please, eat. I must confess, you've become something of a fascination with me. Oliver Queen, Starling City's favorite son, presumed dead after a maritime accident 4 years ago. What do you want from me? Answers? You try to blow up my casino? Now my sources tell me you've become Bratva. I have many enemies, but you're quite unique. A week of questioning, a week of torture, and you told my men nothing. Just accept the occasional screaming for a woman to avenge her. What was her name? Diana. Galina. Galina. Как вы раньше.
скоро зацветет, я принесу к вам в офис несколько цветков, как только они распустятся.
Какая причина будет тебя убедить? Okay. Lovely lady. I believe you knew her daughter, Diana. Yes. Yes, she came to me. Galina came to me a year ago. She said both her children, Diana, Blood, had disappeared. I said, do not worry. I'll get you a job so you can get by while you wait for them to return. And she's been there ever since.
Yeah, no, I like the. One of my notes was that Dolph is a great food actor, like because he is. Yeah. You meet him in this sequence, and yeah, he is like, eating, but it doesn't feel like fake Hollywood, food acting. So, but I thought maybe his Russian accent was a little bit dodgy, and it helped.
It comes obviously, in and out,
yeah, and he is absolutely, in this primarily because he's so famous for being Ivan Drago, and that was a role that like lines did he have in Rocky IV, like maybe 10, so it's definitely one of those things that less might be more, but as far as the acting, like I think. Yeah, I think he does a really good job in this story arc. So yeah, he was fun to watch for sure.
Well, and it's not necessary. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I don't think it's necessary for us to go through each one of these episodes because some of them, I mean, he's barely even in them. But I mean, that's pretty much the story arc. Okay, he's the big bad Russian villain in the flashback sequences.
I guess his overall plan is to seemingly to overthrow this Russian the Bratva, which is the Russian mafia, which is Oliver is teamed up with he's got in good with the Russian mafia, and so Kovar is trying to take them down and then seemingly like take control of Russia, like. They kind of indicate that, once he does this, his next goal will be taking over the military, taking over the country. So he is in terms of big bads, his goal is pretty, substantial. So,
yeah. Well, and there are a number of fight scenes between Kovar and Oliver Queen. Many of them, including the best one, I will say, use a stunt double for Lundgren, and so it's pretty obvious that it's not him.
Yeah.
There's that one scene. I mean, it is awesome. I believe it's in is it the first or the second episode where we see Dolph's character? But it's a really cool scene. But the lighting makes it to where you can. It's clearly Dolph's stunt double. But
I think it's episode 7. It's in the vigilante because there's a very silhouetted fight in the hallway. Yeah. I don't know. It's probably not even Stephen Amell that Dolph's stunt double is fighting. So it's neither of them,
Neither of them. Yeah. And so, like we said, Oliver Queen thinks that he killed Kovar in one of the episodes. Quite a few episodes pass till it is revealed that Konstantin Kovar is not dead and that, like I said, he wants revenge. And so, so we get more scenes that are kind of sprinkled throughout the season, throughout the episodes. It all culminates in their final fight, which is also a flashback where Oliver, Queen, and Kovar, they're wrestling in a forest, and then Queen eventually snaps the neck of Kovar, finally putting him out for good. Again, that's the thing. If I'm going to give this series, these episodes from the season some praise, I will say I think the fight choreography is really quite good, and that's the other thing too that I feel we need to give credit to the show for is the show. I mean, we're kind of in this weird age right now. I don't know if you've listened to any of my previous episodes, but we're kind of in this weird age right now where a lot of these independent action movies, especially the ones that Dolph does, really just don't have any budgets really at all. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of nice when you are watching one of these films and it's like, wow, that's a real explosion there. Or wow, that is a real boat chase there. I mean, they're really using a boat there and they have a helicopter shot or a drone, if you will, that's filming this boat. I mean, we just don't get those kind of things in a lot of these independent films anymore.
Sure.
So that right there, I will say this film doesn't scrimp on budget and on the fight scenes.
Yeah, no, that's good point. Yeah, there's good Oliver versus a machine gun on a helicopter that is really well done, and then the helicopter crashes, and then that's where Kovar had been. He'd been in the helicopter, and then that's when they get on the ground and have their final fight. So yeah, that's all really well done.
Well, and I think what they're doing here, and maybe you might be, because again, you know the show more than I do, but I think what they're doing is they've put the Dolph Lundgren flashback scenes. These are in here to kind of parallel the events that Oliver Queen is currently dealing with.
Right.
So these episodes, there's essentially two story arcs. There's the flashback story arc with Konstantin Kovar and Russia and all that. And then we have the current story arc. So we already kind of mentioned it, but yeah. Green Arrow is on the trail of Adrian Chase, who he's not just the district attorney of Star City and former friend of Oliver Queen, but he's also a serial killer who calls himself Prometheus. He's also referred to by the media as the Throwing Star Killer. But that's what they're doing. They're kind of paralleling these two villains here, right?
Yeah, I didn't think that came across as much as previous seasons that I had seen, where the on island kind of flashback stuff would very, very closely parallel what was happening in the present day. Here, I thought it was more because you're getting a storyline across 6 episodes. Each little bit that you see isn't necessarily telling a story. It's telling one story, which I thought was unique versus the times that I can remember in the previous seasons where you'd get almost like the flashback stuff was almost like a bottle episode, contained within each episode that they used it. So this whole storyline in the flashback, I think ultimately, it does mirror the final confrontation that he has with Prometheus, and the way that he handled it back then versus the way he'll handle it in the present day. Those definitely are tied into each other. But it was interesting, like watching. You might just get a 2-minute little sequence in the flashback, and it's like, what did that have to do with the main storyline? Well, nothing really, but it definitely informs. It builds onto this story that as we go, and I really liked this whole Russian backstory thing.
Well, I mean, you already said it, Travis, earlier, that I just want to go back to real quick. It's very clear that this is a television show and not a film. Okay. I mean, there are so many little aspects about it that make it very clear that it's a TV show. And I feel like, look, I think audiences of late have been kind of spoiled in a lot of ways, considering episodic television has become serialized with production values that kind of rival feature-length movies. So we've really been, the landscape of TV has changed significantly, even within the last 10 years. So it's kind of unfair to compare it that way. But
sure.
This here that we're looking at here, that's kind of one of the things that took me out of it a bit, was that it's just so clear that it's a TV show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
From the silly, dopey dialogue. Okay, I don't think the dialogue in many scenes is very strong, especially Oliver Queen's tech assistant.
Oh,
okay?
yeah.
She's just obnoxious to the obvious the obvious commercial breaks. Like, you always know when there's going to be a commercial break. You know what I mean? It does become,
The stuff that really bugged me watching this, what were some of the interactions? Because this is also like, I was used to an Arrow show that had Felicity, his kind of the quote unquote man in the chair, and then John Diggle, his friend, his bodyguard, and that was it. Like, that was his team. So then when I start watching this, it's like, you got a character called Wild Dog. You got a Ragman in some of the early episodes, Mr. Terrific. I mean, you got some deeper bench, DC characters that are now on this team Arrow. And, so in some of the early episodes, you got team dynamics and they're not really all getting along. So some of that was interesting, but then later, some of the stuff with Mr. Terrific, who's, I guess, I don't know if they call him that in this, but his name's Curtis, and he and Felicity would have like these reference, not battles, but like they would make a reference, like he makes a reference to Witness, the Harrison Ford movie, and it's like, what, you guys don't get that reference? Like, they speak to each other in references because they're geeks, and it's like that stereotype, like not all geeks talk to each other in movie references and pop culture references, and especially not when people's lives are at stake and people are missing. Like, no one's taking a break to, make a Witness reference, so that was a little annoying. That's just like a become shorthand for like, oh, see how geeky and this character is. They speak in, dated movie references, so that was a little annoying.
Well, before we get to Team Arrow, okay, because I had some questions for you about that.
Okay.
But what it also does that kind of drove me nuts, okay, is it also, again, another TV trope, okay, but it also does that thing that a lot of, I remember soap operas did it. I remember, going to my grandparents during the summertime and watching soap operas with them or whatever. Those would be on in the background. So that's only my frame of reference there. But it does that thing that drives me nuts, where the time frame of the episodes isn't particularly strong either. So, and what I mean by that is, okay, you'll see, like, okay, you have conversations that are taking forever, that are going for the entire episode, yet then you have events that are going on, simultaneously with the conversation. And I guess the episode that I'm referring to, it's the one where, again, we're looking at modern day, but it's where Oliver Queen has, he's tied up and he's imprisoned by Adrian Chase.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the entire episode is him pretty much in this lair. He's imprisoned or whatever. And he and Adrian Chase are having this conversation that's just going in circles. It's just going completely in circles. Yet meanwhile, we see all the other characters. They're in Star City and they're, tackling various, obstacles and doing whatever. And then every time you cut back to Oliver Queen, he's having that same conversation. And it's like, well, how much time is passing here?
Yeah. And that maybe that they can get away with that because he is imprisoned and they're literally he keeps coming back to him like, tell me what I want to know. So maybe it's like, they literally have been having that same conversation for that long. I don't know. Yeah, the whole time frame stuff with this, the stuff that really bugs me is the TV stuff of like, you have a character, again, Mr. Terrific, played by Echo Kellum, and in his scenes in the Arrow Cave, what they call it, the Arrow, the team's lair, his hair will be real big, but then when he suits up, his hair is all braided. It's all, and it's like, when is that happening? And then when
he puts the thing on his face. He paints his face.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was wondering that same thing too, actually, is
stuff like that really bugs me. Like, you cannot, dip in and out of character when like that takes. I mean, I don't know. I don't have that hairstyle, but I think to put all of your fro into cornrows, I think that takes a while. So just stupid stuff like that seemingly happens instantly, and that's always bugged me with any superhero thing, especially like in here we have all of their suits are all in this Arrow cave. All their suits hang on mannequins, and it's like, how long does it take you guys to take apart these mannequins to get your armor and your costumes off of those, put them on yourself? The Batman stuff has been doing that as well. Like, it just always bugs me. It's like this stuff would take you so long to put on, but that's just, one of those little silly things, but
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're kind of wrapping up, but we can't discuss these episodes without discussing Team Arrow. And so, yeah. Okay. This was one of the big aspects. Okay. If you go back through and you watch any of the marketing for the show when this season premiered, okay, back in 2016, 2017, this was one of the big things that, the fifth season was promoted on, was that Green Arrow now has his own team of heroes.
Yeah.
Okay. He has his own Arrow team. And so it makes sense, okay, from a storytelling standpoint, it makes sense that Green Arrow would align himself with the team, especially seeing as how he's the mayor. Okay. So he has a city to run, so he can't do it all.
Right.
Okay, fine. But what's so funny about this is similar to how Green Arrow is that character from the C list. It only makes sense that his team of heroes comes from the D list.
Right.
And so the only one that I knew, the only one that I had any kind of a familiarity with was Wild Dog. And the only reason I know Wild Dog is because I remember reading comics in the late 80s, early 90s, and that was a miniseries that came out. So DC was heavily promoting that miniseries because I saw ads for it in some of the issues I was reading. And so what it was basically it was their attempt to do Punisher, but also I'm assuming Friday the 13th was big, so they thought let's
hockey
do
mask
Punisher with a hockey mask. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Wild Dog is the only one that I have any kind of familiarity with, but these other ones, Mr. Terrific, I have no idea. Ragman, I have no idea. John Diggle, who apparently just throws on a helmet.
Yeah.
That's Team Arrow there. And I guess John Diggle, that's not even a comic character, is it? That's a character created for the show, right?
Correct. So, yeah, they started the series out with Diggle was just Oliver's driver. Once he came back to the real world, his family assigned this driver to him, and they got to know each other pretty well. And this was when Oliver was starting out his career as this vigilante. And so he'd have his driver who, was smart enough to figure out you're up to something, and he kind of started to sidekick with him. And he's like, well, I'm supposed to protect you. So if that means going out with you while you're doing your vigilante stuff, okay, I guess I'm a part of this. And so they teamed up and they formed a really tight friendship really quickly. And it became like his best friend and his confidant. And then I think slowly over time, they were like, well, it doesn't really make sense that he would just be his bodyguard / driver. He has to suit up at some point. So then they started to develop this backstory where he has ties with Argus, which eventually leads to he was on one of the versions of the Suicide Squad in this Arrowverse. He went under the name Freelancer, and then I think they dropped that once he was fully, in costume with Oliver going out. He went under the name Spartan, and that's where he basically just has a little kind of suit of armor and this helmet. He doesn't really have powers or anything. I guess they saved that for the end of the series. Apparently there's a scene where he opens this box, and it's out of the box comes this glowing green light. So it's to imply that in this universe, he will become a Green Lantern. Kind of a cool little, hint at things, for the future. I guess that might have even he's crossed over now into the Superman and Lois series, I think. But yeah, I mean, he's a character that, they created for the series, and they named him after Andy Diggle, who wrote, Green Arrow Year One, which this series took a lot of inspiration from Year One. So that's why his name's Diggle.
Well, and again, I mean, and we should probably say it's not fair for me, okay, because I realize I'm coming in a lot of respects, I'm that kid who's kind of walking into a movie theater. To quote the Big Lebowski, okay, when John Goodman was bitching at Steve Buscemi, but that's basically what I'm doing here. Is I'm coming in. Yeah, I'm out of my element here. Okay, there you go. I'm out of my. I'm feeling like I should go back and watch Big Lebowski, but yeah, I'm out of my element here. Okay, I'm coming into a show that already has characters and everything established. Okay, 5 seasons in. So I realize that, okay? Having said that, though, again, because it's a TV show, there are so many little elements that just kind of left me, confused, okay? Because, again, you have a show that has 5 seasons worth of baggage, okay? So you have all these characters and things like that. But then it does that thing, again, like with so many of these, soap opera-esque TV series that go on for 23 episodes a season, where you'll get one random scene where this John Diggle character is reuniting with his family. And then his family is never shown again. And it's what's the point of that? There's another scene where Wild Dog is fighting, I had no idea.
Custody
he's fighting for custody. And so they show that one random scene where he's in court trying to get custody. And then we never, that plot line is never resolved.
Well, it's I think in the first 2 episodes, we get the character Ragman, who I don't know anything about. I think he has weird powers where he can control his suit, has these tendrils that come out and wrap people up or whatever. And then we never see him again. After episode, maybe he's in 6 and 7. I think he's in episode 6 and 7. And then the thing that happens after episode 7 is that's when one of the big multi-show crossover event happens. So I don't know if he was in that event and he got killed, or he got, sucked into another, reality universe. I don't know. But he's not on the team, from episode 17 through 23. So yeah, and they reference him, I think in the first couple episodes, Felicity, they call her Overwatch because she needs a nickname too. She has a boyfriend, on the police force. He never, comes back in the later season or episodes. So yeah, who knows?
Well, okay, here we are at the end. And again, first of all, Travis, I want to say thank you so much for agreeing to watch these with me and coming
Absolutely,
on.
Yeah.
Again, we are not reviewing the entire season. We're not reviewing the entire show because I imagine there are actually quite a few Arrow podcasts out there. So if this crosses paths with them, I imagine they're gonna be listening to this saying, "You guys did something so unfair here. How can you?"
Yeah.
So okay. If we look at this, I'm curious, Travis, do these 6 episodes get a recommend from you, not just as a fan of Dolph Lundgren, but also as a fan of comic books and their adaptations on both the big screen and the small screen? Where does this one lie for you?
Overall, I did enjoy the story that we watched through these 6 episodes. It definitely ended on a point because this is where season 5 ends. It made me want to watch season 6, or at least the first episode, because it does have a real good cliffhanger ending. And yeah, I mean, overall, I think it was a fun, chunk of the series to watch. I definitely haven't done this before where we just take a look at, a couple episodes spread apart through a season. But it was fun to do for sure. So, this gets a recommend from me. I would suggest watching these 6. I think it tells a solid of enough story. You can ignore the little outlying things, that don't get paid off, but that's the nature of, watching episodes that are maybe separated by a little bit. So, but I think there's enough here to enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, watching this, I honestly think that this is really just for fans of the show Arrow and no one else. I mean, that's how I came back to it. I think the production values were all pretty well done. I mentioned, the practical explosions, the speeding boat chase. I mean, you really have to kind of sit back and marvel at that they did this for a television show, which I thought was pretty cool. But in the end, for me, I go back to where I was as a little kid. Green Arrow was always kind of a meh character who's only made slightly cooler thanks to this show now. And so other than a few really cool action sequences, there was really nothing here that caused me to kind of snap to attention.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And I'm well aware of the fact that I'm coming into this and I'm reviewing 6 episodes from the 5th season in an already established and fan-revered television series.
Right.
I get that. But as is, there were so many more moments that came off as cheesy rather than badass for me. And so that's kind of where I stand. As for Dolph Lundgren's inclusion in the show, I think he is indeed a welcome presence. But there's just simply not enough of him to make his character stand out. There are such long stretches without his character that you almost forget he's even in this. Okay, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was at. I think he's in these flashbacks that I was going to say that they didn't make much sense, but I'm glad to have you on because you kind of helped me make sense of how they kind of parallel things that were to come. But in my opinion, these flashback sequences, they don't really add a whole lot of stakes to the show because, again, they're flashbacks.
Right.
So you kind of know what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
Thankfully, that Konstantin Kovar is a really cool character, but in the end, I was left wanting so much more of this character and less of the Prometheus subplot.
Sure.
And I think maybe in the end, I guess that's probably because I'm biased on that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, this has been a ton of fun. Like I said, it's been quite a while, but where can fans find you and what is it you're working on? What is it you'd like to promote?
Sure.
You get the show is yours. Tell us what's going on.
I'm still doing the same thing that I probably was promoting last time, my show Real Comic Heroes, and we go through a big list of comic book movies and we review them. We started with Superman and the Mole Men from 1951, and we've been working in release order. As of this recording, we've made it to the late 90s. We just did what did we do? Starship Troopers from 97, and then Alien Resurrection we just did. We've got the Bond movie Tomorrow Never Dies is coming up next for us. So we're hitting some of the late 90s movies, and like I said, we go in release order, so it's kind of interesting to follow along with these this genre, and doesn't exclusively include comic book movies. We've branched out and done, like I said, Alien, the James Bond stuff, the Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Star Trek, a lot of other similar genres. Just taking it one film at a time and looking at how movies as a whole and how the genre as a whole have changed and grown and all that. So if you're interested, check out Real Comic Heroes. That's real with 2 E's. And then my other podcast that is kind of new. It's still in development. I'm still recording and producing the episodes that I will then release as a whole. Is my Movie by Minutes podcast, where if you're not familiar with Movie by Minutes, it's a genre of podcasting where you take a movie, you cut it into typically 1 minute segments, and then you spend, 20, 30, 40 minutes sometimes, one episode at a time looking at that 1 minute of film and just breaking down everything that goes into making that movie and the themes and the dialogue and all that. So, but I am doing a Movie by Minutes podcast on the 1991 Kevin Costner, Kevin Reynolds movie Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. So that's my podcast, Minute of Thieves. We'll be going through that movie, and that's one of those that I'm like I said, I'm still in production on that one, so I'm recording a bunch of episodes so that once I start releasing episodes, I can release them Monday through Friday, 1 episode a day. So I need to have a bunch of them recorded and produced before I start releasing. So as of right now, there's nothing for you to hear on that show, but just something to look forward to, I guess.
Excellent.
If you're interested. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is, I really do appreciate you coming on.
For sure.
You didn't, and what was so cool about this is you didn't even really bat an eye about it. I didn't have to twist your leg or anything. You said, yeah, I'd totally love to. So I really do appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Anytime.
So great. All right. Well, to everyone out there who is listening, please feel free to rate and review the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever else you go subscribe. We always appreciate the reviews. And we'll see you all next time on I Must Break This Podcast.